There's the conference on investment in Algeria that will take place in London 10 days, a week from now, on the 10th of December.
Exactly a week today.
Okay, yeah, could you tell us more about the goals of this meeting?
Well, the main goal is to ensure that British companies are aware of what sort of opportunity the modern country of Algeria presents for them. And regrettably, too many of them don't yet know. So we will be demonstrating the sorts of successes that companies have had in their dealings with Algeria, and encouraging new ones to come and take a look for themselves.
Good. And are we expecting any signatures or contracts between Algerian companies and British?
Expecting, yes. I hope that happens. There will be some contract signatures. There will be signatures of the double taxation agreement. That's going to be very important. And also some statements of intent and some memoranda of understanding about cooperation for the future.
So, in the past few years, we've seen many exchanges in visits, bilateral cooperation, but concretely, there have not been that many actual investments in Algeria. Do you know why it's been so low in terms of amounts invested in Algeria? And do you have any concrete examples of companies that are present actually in Algeria?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest foreign investor in Algeria is said to be BP.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and they are British. So there is investment here, and there are increasing levels of it. But until my Prime Minister came here in January 2013, the level of interest from companies outside oil and gas is very limited. And that is now increasing. And a sign of its increase is the existence of this conference. And you can't have a conference until you've got people who are interested in attending. They're not paid to attend. They only go to a conference like this if there's a serious business interest. And I'm glad to say that the work of the last 2 years has led to there being a very big interest in this Algeria conference. I mean, bigger than most conferences of its type. And it's the biggest Algerian showcase in the UK probably ever. Certainly since the visit to the President of the Republic in 2006. So in itself, it's an indication of growth. It will lead to more growth. We've got companies who are making investments here in very broad divergent sectors such as agriculture. The investment being made in training is huge. Industrial investment is still relatively small, and we do have companies like GSK and Unilever who produce in Algeria. So it's not nothing, but it's far smaller than it should be, and that's what we're seeking to change with the Algerian government.
Do you know what amount should we expect in terms of investment as far as UK companies in Algeria? Do you have any concrete examples of what has been invested in particular companies in Algeria?
I haven't got that sort of granular detail to offer you now, no.
Okay. Yeah, so do you know if British companies are experiencing any difficulties or hardships in terms of investing in Algeria? Are there any, what's preventing them from going further? Is it the general business climate in Algeria?
Well, I think the principal thing stopping them is that they never come and find out. You know, there has been an attitude about Algeria which has ridiculously has been Algeria, well, don't the French sort of have the market cornered? And that's been an impression that has lasted for far too long. And we're seeing that change. So that's the biggest problem. The people who come here, people who actually come and visit, and we had 13 companies in this house on Sunday night for a reception at the start of their trade mission here, which has gone extremely effectively. These are largely companies who are new to Algeria, and their reactions are extremely positive. And several of them have stayed on longer than the formal trade mission to have bilateral contacts of their own. You know, it's really productive coming to talk here.
Okay, but do you think the present business climate is encouraging for UK companies to invest in Algeria, or are there any things blocking actually investing?
Well, I think any company in any country would always be able to say, I want that and that and that and that and that to be easier. And that's a natural thing for companies to seek. Governments have a complementary requirement to think slightly more broadly than just the interests of an individual company. So there are certainly things that business would like to see changed. But frankly, that's up to the Algerian government and the Algerian people as to the rate of change that they want to see in the business climate. That's not for us to dictate. And the evidence is that there are plenty of companies doing really good investment in this country. I think the bigger problem is the disproportionately small number of British companies who are part of that total. And I think that's the thing we have to really change. People ask about 4951 is that an obstacle? I would say that for some it will be an obstacle. That might be the sort of thing that they'll say, we've got easier options elsewhere. And I think attracting foreign direct investment is very competitive. Companies have choices, and they will go where their company's interests are best served. And British government really takes trouble to try and make itself as attractive as possible to FDI. And I don't know any government who doesn't. So we work with what we've got.
Regarding with regard to the counter-terrorism and security cooperation, how does the bilateral relationship work between the UK and Algeria in concrete words?
Yeah. Well, I can give you concrete words. I'm not going to go into the detail of it though, because it's naturally an area where we enjoy a very the relationship that we enjoy has to remain confidential. It's not something we can really talk about in public, but it's a strengthening relationship. Of that there is no doubt. I see how the various sectors of the response to terrorism work through the embassy between our two governments, and that's a really strong part of the relationship. I was in London in October for the third session of our strategic security partnership, where we had a very frank discussion about our domestic security situations, about the regional security situation, including discussions about Algeria's role in piloting the peace talks for Mali, but also about the challenges which were faced because of the situation in Libya. And UK and Algeria have got a very close analysis of what is required in Libya in support of the UN's efforts to bring peace there. But on the sort of concrete aspects of counter-terrorism, our relationship is going from strength to strength. Not surprisingly, we're in exactly the same position. Fierce opponents of kidnap for ransom, and that was one of the top priorities for our chairmanship of the G8 process last year, and an area where UK and Algeria see absolutely eye for eye.
On the military cooperation, is there, do you know if the UK government is willing to sell weapons and arms to the Algerian army?
It's a very short answer, but yes. I mean, we have our own system for licensing defence sales, defence exports, and that licensing system looks at all relevant cases. But as long as the licensing authorities in the UK don't have an objection, then yes, there's no difficulty at all. And there are, as I said in this trade delegation we had this week, there were defence contractors as part of that. So it's a natural part of our cooperation. And because we both have both needs and experience of countering terrorism, actually, if the Defence Ministry in Algeria has needs to help in the fight against terrorism, then British suppliers are very well placed to help fill those needs.
In the aftermath of the Tingituri attack in Yemen, is the UK fearful for its national here in Algeria?
I'm sure you've looked at our travel advice. I mean, the travel advice that we post on the Foreign Office's website is a very, very important component of the advice that we make available to British citizens. And it is fundamentally broken down into three categories for Algeria. One is where we advise against all travel, and that's fundamentally the border areas towards Mali and Libya. An area which is broadly Kabylie, where we advise against anything other than essential travel. And we have highlighted the dangers of being in very remote areas, and we advise people, if they can avoid it, from staying overnight. And for the rest of the country, which is still quite a big area, we advise the same sort of caution and vigilance as we would in most countries of the world where there is a background terrorist threat. And we have a threat warning system which recognises the terrorist threat that Algeria confronts in the way that we confront it. But there is no reason for British citizens not to come and live and work in Algiers and most other parts of the country.
You mentioned difficulties to get to the UK, the language requirements and the fees, obviously. But there is also the visa issue, which is a big preoccupation for both Algerian government and citizens. Algerians often complain about France's policy in the visa issue, but some say that the UK also has a quite restrictive policy and deals with visa. Do you know if the UK intends to relax those procedures, or is it going to maintain the procedures in place at the moment?
I'd be astonished if we were to relax our visa system. I mean, every country's visa system usually exists for two reasons. One is to promote security of the country, and the other is to prevent illegal migration. And both of those are very hot topics, both in the UK and in almost every other country I know. I think our visa systems can get more intelligent sometimes, and there is a constant attempt to make the system a better system. We moved in Algeria to a different visa application centre, which I think is delivering a far better service to Algerian applicants. We've had a real focus throughout my time here on ensuring that the standards that we make publicly available, that we actually managed to keep to those. And for a large part of the summer we did not. I mean, it was taking too long to get the reply to a visa application. We are now back within our proclaimed targets. So we will always be looking to deliver a better system, or for the system to deliver what it set out to deliver. But I don't think the actual requirements of the system as such will be reduced. But then I don't see anybody doing that worldwide.
Yeah, but maybe as part of a bilateral agreement. You mentioned security.
But there's no problem about bona fide visitors getting visas. I mean, we are issuing more visas to Algerians than we've ever done. So, you know, it is growing as our cooperation grows. There are still some people who don't get visas. There are probably sometimes some mistakes, and there are people who appeal the visa decision if they were turned down, and some of those are agreed on appeal. But there will always be people who don't get visas, and usually for the right reasons.
Right. Do you have a number of how many visas are issued to Algerians in general?
I should have, but I haven't. I'm sorry. We can give you that separately. Can you do that?
You're asking whether Algeria is regarded as a particular issue.
Yeah. Does it represent a particular threat in terms of security and migration, illegal migration to the UK?
It's a question that's looked at from the other end of the telescope. It's looked at from a UK perspective. So it's a system which is designed to avoid threat of illegal immigration or of threat to the United Kingdom's security from all sources. So it's not particularly saying, you know, we need to do this with that nation and this with that nation. It's looking to provide immigration and security safeguards from all threats. And if there is a country that has a higher record for forged documents, for example, in support of visa applications, then that country will probably be looked at, or nationals of that country will be looked at more carefully.
Is it the case in Algeria?
It is an issue in Algeria, yeah.
Okay. So Algeria is actually being looked at more carefully than most other countries.
I wouldn't say that. But it is looked that visa applicants are looked at carefully. Yeah, but they are everywhere. I mean, we could have this conversation in any country of the world,
right?
You know, and it would, you know, as an ordinary traveller, wouldn't it be lovely just to go everywhere? But unfortunately, the world we live in has some uglier corners, and the other bit of us as a citizen is that we demand protection from our governments, and that's all our government's doing.
Right. Okay. Well, that'll be all. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you,
Mr. Ambassador.
Thanks a lot.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
All mine.